Hi everyone, Harry here to talk about the final in court chapter of the sort of crazy detour that is the motion to disqualify Fani Willis. So today, Judge McAfee heard final closing arguments from each side, and that means sort of preview of how cumbersome this trial will be if we ever get to it. A whole series of defendants, and then a little bit, and then from the state. And I've been fairly critical of McAfee all the way through. I think he has been a solid trial judge to date, but I really think it was a mistake, or at least I'm puzzled how he could have let this whole thing sort of go on and on and on and on, when it was a motion brought by a defendant who had a legal duty, if he wanted the judge to hear it, to give some evidentiary basis. And really, today just reinforced the whole thing has been sort of speculation on speculation on speculation. All right. And speculation about what? All right. So first, there is the notion, is there a financial conflict of interest? That would be the one basis, as far as I can see, that Georgia law just might say there should be a disqualification of Fani Willis. And the argument here is they began the affair before Wade was hired. Willis hired Wade. And why? What was the motivation? Basically to go on lavish vacations and, to really let him kind of string along the case so that the paycheck keeps coming to him and they get to go on excellent vacations. That's really the only theory of financial conflict of interest, and it has to be. That's the reason she hires him. So there were some who tried to go directly there, and so questions came up. McAfee, very methodical here. How much of a financial interest does there have to be for it to be a conflict? And one lawyer said, $6. That's enough. That's a conflict if basically Wade is in there, paying for one dessert. Another proffered the standard for when you have to disclose gifts, which is $100 a year if it's over that. Those seem perfectly irrelevant to me. The question is there a financial conflict of interest such that, the reason she hired him was there has to be prejudice to the defendant. That's been the missing item all the way through. They've certainly, dirtied up both Wade and Willis, but they have to be showing they've been harmed. So the idea has to be that Wade is hired and it's to get money, and so you want to string things along so you get more money, so you keep going on lavish vacations. And even though you're not having the best prosecutorial judgment, you're stringing things along, and it hurts the defense. To say it is to show how far-fetched it is if you're taking seriously the concept of an actual financial conflict of interest. And even this notion, the sort of path of retreat of all these sorts of things, appearance of a conflict. Well, again, the appearance of the conflict has to be the appearance that Willis hired Wade so he would get paid and they would go on lavish vacations. It has to be at least the appearance of that. And, say what you will about the affair and when it started and why, etc. For the DA to totally corrupt the biggest case of her career so she can go on, some somewhat nicer vacations with the person she's hired for that, rather than the best for the job. And by the way, we know that he wasn't the first person she offered the job to. Really seems to me far-fetched in the extreme. And it goes to, I think, the whole mess that McAfee has created. He, when a defendant makes a motion like this, a serious one, to disqualify the entire office, and clearly clearly, I think there's no disagreement here, there be no possible trial of Trump in 2024, you got to come forward with something, and not just something that, makes them look bad, or even, to my mind, suggests they, were, uncandid, or, lied. Not try to soft pedal it or sugarcoat it at all. That was the other thing that was there sort of in the water, was, they had lied, about when the affair began, and that was in the argument of some of the defendants, that was enough. So, because then you would not have faith, Judge, they said, in the whole credibility of the DA, and so you just need to disqualify her. And McAfee asked the right question here, which is, well, wouldn't that mean I'd have to disqualify her from every case then? Because that would always be there. And they tried to say, well, no, here in particular, because here is where the lie occurred. I mean, basically, under Georgia law, I think it's the financial conflict of interest alone, and it's not at all clear that, even if they did lie about it, and I don't think at the end of the day, in part, this is because Bradley, the former partner of Wade, who certainly had suggested before that had started before Wade came into office, really bobbed and weaved on the stand and said he didn't remember and it was all speculation. I don't even think they have enough to go on to brand them as having given false testimony. But that also that's just not the standard for disqualifying a whole office. That could be an ethical problem on her part. Could be something for the voters to consider. Lord knows, it's the whole thing was just a total blunder on her part, on both their parts, whether it happened before or after he was hired. But the focus again is there a basis to show a conflict, because that's what you would need. How has the so what question, which is, they come forward with all these things that really have, I think, no matter what happens, really sullied Willis's reputation. I mean, she came back with some bravado, and some people were like, "Good for you," and "Way to go." But this really is a mess, I think, and a black eye for the case. And it's just not clear to me to what end. But at the end of the day, and at the end of the hearing, McAfee said, "I will try to do this in within 2 weeks." Try to do it within 2 weeks. That's already suggests he views it as very challenging. And he said there's a lot of legal issues and factual issues that I have to work through. Maybe that's just a casual statement, but that certainly suggests that he thinks more than just an actual demonstration of a financial conflict of interest could be material here, and just focusing again on where I think the focus should be. They just don't have. They could have some sort of abstract speculation that, in some sense, Wade's being hired, meant a couple good desserts for her, or but they don't, and they could also have, and they do have some. Said they basically called her a liar, saying, "Oh, this whole cash thing, we don't really believe it. That's how you get away from having to actually show your financial records." But the whole question remains, so what? I think that should have been the question asked at the very beginning of this misadventure, but it's at least the one that will be asked now. And McAfee is suggesting that it's not an easy question. That is, there's several questions of fact and several points of law. And that has to mean, it seems to me, that he sees some relevance, something for him actually to have to sort through on when the affair began, and all the sorts of icky factual issues that they've been pounding and pounding on for several weeks. In the meantime, speaking of several weeks, during these 2 weeks, everything remains frozen. This is a case that from the start, people have estimated could take over a month just to select a jury. And it did have a certain momentum. People were pleading guilty, and it seemed like, that things were really moving apace and sort of funneling into a focus on Trump and a couple others, including Meadows, who has definitively lost his effort to get out of this case and bring it to federal court. And that momentum surely has been lost. Maybe McAfee could reignite things and get it going quickly, but there's a feel that the whole thing has been made more sluggish, and that the prosecution has become mired in controversy without regard to what McAfee does now. I have to say, he strikes me as someone who looks and adheres to the law, and I cannot see his disqualifying Fani Willis here. I could see it, but I think it would be improper. His doing some tongue wagging along the way, or saying, I just can't be sure, so I won't, or in some ways, calling her credibility into question, all those things, though he shouldn't. But I don't think he will bounce her. And yet, weeks and a lot of momentum have been lost. And, it's been a rough week for time and accountability as far as Donald Trump's concerned, because the Supreme Court's taking of the immunity case makes it more remote that the federal case go forward. And this whole issue makes it makes it more remote that this case go forward in 2024. And we'll talk a little bit more about Judge Eileen Cannon, but that to me is not looking that auspicious either. So it does feel as if there's been a kind of lost sense of momentum. We'll see if it comes back. So there you have it. To me, a whole lot of stuff that really didn't need to be plowed through without some preliminary showing that the defendants have never made, and a lot of indulgence from Judge McAfee, and still a couple more weeks, and supposedly a complicated set of issues. So this has been more than a little frolic and detour, and it might have, even if, as I expect, he holds against the defendants, it still might have some abiding impact on the case as it goes forward. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.